Someone taught you to fly.
Yeah.
Someone taught you how to stay grounded.
Yes. So two folks. And
Tell me more. The person who mentored me is a giant locally in this industry. We don't work the same way. We really don't. There are a lot of things that we do the same. There are many things that we do different.
Do you think in the near future, if we have the rate drops like the Feds are talking about, what's your opinion on how heavily that'll affect the market?
Do you think it's a good time to buy? And I answer their question with a question.
All right.
Is it not a good idea to own a home? All right, everyone, welcome to the Nest Podcast, where we discuss real estate, health, wealth, and life. Today's guest is Mr. Alan Dugas, realtor with Latter Blum of Acadiana. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Derek.
So I wanted to start out by thanking you for coming, but wanted to let everyone know how you and I got connected. It's a bit unconventional. I'll let you tell the story.
Okay. Yeah, so when I first got into real estate in June 2019, my wife suggested that I meet with her old elementary school buddy, Derek Roban, for lending advice. At that point in my career, I was taking in information like drinking through a fire hose. So fast forward to 6 months later, beginning of 2020, I had all of my lenders, I had all of my title people in place because they were more in your face about it. Didn't recognize that wasn't something I liked at the time, but yeah. So,
well, you were getting referred people by those around you that you were being mentored.
Agents around me, they were saying, you absolutely have to use this person or absolutely have to go here. And through trial and error, I was able to weed out, the people that actually worked for me and the ones that.
And I don't know that I know a lot of people in your sphere. Yeah. So they wouldn't have necessarily been able to recommend me.
Right.
And then comes Katie.
Yeah. And then comes Katie. So I always knew of you, intended to meet you. But here we are, The
universe brought us together 4 years later.
Absolutely. It took a man in a Barbie box.
That's true. That's true, because we did meet inadvertently by chance at, what was that, the RAA
Realtor Appreciation Day.
Yep. In a blonde wig.
Yep.
Yeah. So much for first impressions.
Right.
Funny thing about that blonde wig, I've been struggling with my hair starting to turn gray, and I got a greater appreciation for it after I saw photos of myself with a blonde wig and said, you know what, I'm okay.
Yeah. You look distinguished.
Yeah, apparently.
And a blonde wig, just a little silly.
It didn't work. It didn't work at all. It was immediately apparent. Immediately fell in love with my hair again, and a lot of good things came out of that day.
Yeah.
So crazy story. So I was actually told the same thing by a mutual acquaintance in the industry about that as well. Actually, a title attorney who had told me, like, hey, you need to connect with, this guy, and he said he's been wanting to meet you, and I'm like, oh, that's not usually how that works, right?
So you heard the story about my wife from someone else?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you confirmed it, it was interesting. I thought she was pulling my leg.
All right.
And lo and behold, there we go. You confirmed it, and
honest to God truth.
I think my brain locked up when you told me it was true. I was just expecting you to tell me that she was, I was being punked or something. But anyway, well, okay. So you said 4 years ago.
Yeah, a little over 4 years.
That's when you got started.
Yeah.
What got you into the industry?
So I was in international food sales prior to real estate. During that time, I had steady paycheck. I had insurance. I had my family was covered. But the seed was planted about real estate by my future mentor, Penny McGehee. She was our real estate agent. She sold 1, 2, maybe 3 houses for us at that point. And on the second house, she mentioned to me, Alan, I really want you to come to work with me. I think you'd be a great real estate agent. Well, I came from a background of, in my teenage years, helping my dad build houses. And so real estate always kind of was a part of me, a part of my past, a part of who I was. And I thought.
But it was never on your radar.
It was never on my radar.
Professionally.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because I told her, I said, listen, Penny, at that point, I've got a steady paycheck and insurance. I do not want to be a commission-only salesperson.
Right.
So.
Well, you're a father of three.
Father of three daughters.
Yeah.
Husband of one. So, but yeah, ultimately what happened was the company that I was working for in the food sales, they divested all of their brands. I did a little bit of work for one of the companies that bought one of the brands, introducing them to international clients. I did that for about a year. Took them around the world, food shows, things like that. And then ultimately we agreed to part ways. So at that point, I started doing some construction work.
Still hadn't talked to Penny again.
So I started doing construction work thinking, okay, I had a lot of fun doing this as a kid. And quickly realized that in my 30s, it was way different. Took my body longer to recover from, pouring concrete all day long and sometimes maybe having a boom arm, dropping the concrete, sometimes doing it by wheelbarrow. The heavy lifting stuff was taking a toll on me. So I did that for about a year. And then one day, Katie said, you know what, you need to reconsider becoming a real estate agent. And so she kind of gave me a little push. She said, hey, listen, I can carry the family. If you can go and get educated and take the test. So I did
the licensing test.
The licensing test for real estate, yes. So
still hadn't talked to Penny yet.
Okay. So I did that in January, end of January 2019. I ordered the kit, the course, through one of our affiliates in New Orleans that provides educational material, and started reading it and quickly got fed up with it. So I circled back around in March because my time was ending on the amount of time that I had to take the classes and the educational side of it, and then got really serious about it. We went on a family trip, came back, got serious about it, and just did it in like 3 weeks, did all the coursework and scheduled my test. After I got serious about it, I scheduled it for like 3 weeks to the day so that I basically forced myself to do it.
Sure.
At that point.
It became real at that point.
It became real, yeah.
Every choice you woke up to make
was about whether I'm going to get on the computer and do 8 to 10 hours worth of listening.
Every day.
Every day.
And you did that. If you didn't do 8 hours a day, what would have been the timeline? Not 3 weeks. It would have been 6.
6, yeah.
9.
No, well, it's 90 hours pre-licensing.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
So it's your timeline. But it's like you buy into a 1 month or you can add on an extra month. I didn't want to add on and add on and add on until I was just done with trying. So I set some hard times, some hard dates, and then basically, got back into it, finished up the educational side of it, had that test already scheduled in Baton Rouge. So I drove to Baton Rouge, took the test, came home. On my way back, I called Penny and I said, hey, Penny.
Not knowing if you had passed yet, or did you know?
Well, I knew because at the time there was instantaneous results. Okay. So I called Penny. I said, hey, Penny, I'm licensed. What do I do next? And she says, hey, Alan, how you been? It's been a few years.
Back up a second. Hold on.
What are you licensed in? And I said, oh, I got my real estate license. I don't have a broker yet, though. What do I do next? And she's like, oh, my God, Alan, you need to come talk to our training manager at Vanning and Romero at the time.
Right.
I went straight there. I had called a couple of other brokers. I had spoken with several other agents at that point, just kind of getting a feel for different places. But ultimately, I only interviewed at one place, fell in love with the family aspect of how that company was run, and stuck with them. And so that's where I'm at now. But now it's been Latter Blum for several years prior to me getting into the business, but they were still using the Van Eaton name at the time.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, man, I remember I was born and raised here. I remember Van Eaton Romero, the name, the branding of the signs.
Right.
They've
ingrained in all of us.
I think so. I mean, arguably maybe the de facto standard, if you will.
Started in the 70s, 2 pioneer women in a men's world, started a real estate company and made it big.
Yeah. And prominent. And respected.
And still well respected.
Yeah.
They're a huge reason why, aside from Penny and the rest of the team at Latter Blum, Gail and Nancy are a huge reason why I stuck with that company.
Good. And then what happened next?
So
you hired on. You had an unofficial mentor or an official mentor?
So Penny was my mentor. And I tell people this often. Penny taught me how to fly. And I had another mentor who taught me how to stay grounded in systems and documentation. So Penny
someone taught you to fly.
Yeah.
Someone taught you how to stay grounded.
Yes. Ooh. So 2 folks. And
tell me more.
One of them was completely by accident, but Penny, she agreed to mentor me. And we started working together. She would bring me to closing. She would bring me to showing. She would ask me to go and open houses for repairmen. She was just showing me the way of being in the world, working in the business, not on the business. Okay. Right. So in the business, being out and about, doing the sales, doing the
boots on the ground
stuff.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yep. So I was doing a lot of work with her, for her, and just aligning with her,
and for people who don't know Penny, she's been around for a while.
Yes.
So you started off with a Jedi Master.
Yes.
To drop a Star Wars reference, you weren't learning from someone who hadn't.
Correct.
Been through the battles
and
learned
for many years. If you go back through the.
So you started out at a prestigious company, and you started out with a top producer,
a rock star mentor. Yep.
There you go.
And then one day I actually had some showings. I'd been showing a couple some houses, and they decided to write an offer. And then all of a sudden, I didn't know what to do next. So I called Penny. She's like, Alan, I can be there in 3-4 hours. And of course, this is my first deal. So I need it done yesterday, and I don't know how to do it.
Sure.
Right? I've read the contract a dozen times, but now all of a sudden it's foreign language to me. So I'm walking around the office aimlessly, and I come across who I call my second mentor, or truly my, what's the word for it? My grounded version of a mentor, right? Corey Fontenot. Okay. He's retired Coast Guard. And I learned that through a quick conversation we had the first day we met. I sat next to him at a computer, and I looked over at him and said, man, can I ask you a question? And it was something in regards to the contract. And he's like, absolutely. And then he ended up helping me, work through that entire offer to get everything done right, because I didn't know what to write in which blank, and, given a 9-page contract,
Sure.
It was a lot of stuff going on in there that all of a sudden, all of my training for the past 6 months went out the window because I didn't know what any of the language meant. Just because it was such a, high intensity time.
Sure. Well, it's also kind of proof of how there's so many facets to what we do. You were focusing on one, and then you had to put on the second or third and fourth hat at the same time.
Right.
And realize
wait, we're running an entire business here, not just just a sales call.
You're a specialist in real estate, but what that entails is several things you need to be massively competent in.
Right.
To actually be the real estate professional.
So I don't think we even had a lender on board with that client yet. And I'd already showed them maybe 7 houses.
Right.
And they made a decision.
No-no these days.
And then I'm like,
you didn't even know if they could buy.
Wait a second. Where's the money going to come from?
That's right. So look, before we talk about that person not having a lender, just flash back to the time that you talked to your second mentor, and you asked if he would help you.
Yes.
He's probably very kind.
Yes.
But I would imagine he said yes, because I'm hearing your voice through the headphones. I can't imagine he would have told you no. Has anyone ever told you, like, do you have a nickname?
I've been called the voice before at the office.
Okay. So even if he didn't want to help you, he may just have helped you.
Out of kindness, out of I can't tell this guy now.
The voice.
Yeah.
That's the superpower. I'll have to remember that.
Yep.
Okay.
So I sat next to him. We talked about Coast Guard for a while because I recognized quickly he was looking at ships online. And I said, oh, those are cool boats. And he says, we went into about a 10 to 15-minute discussion on the differences between a boat and a ship. Because at that point, all of his life, that's what he knew.
Gotcha.
He had been in the industry maybe a year and a half, longer than I had. So he had just enough knowledge to help me through it. And we've been fast friends ever since. And we've grown together. Actually, we're on a team together now.
Nice. I imagine, I'm making an assumption here, but if he was former military.
Everything is buttoned up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of discipline.
That's what I needed, because I'm just like Penny in the sense that I can fly, but sometimes we do need to be grounded, right? Yep. Sometimes we do need systems.
Consistency.
So
best practices.
One of the first things
technical details.
Once we got past getting to know one another.
And ships versus boats.
Right. Exactly. I realized quickly that he was an 8 to 5 real estate agent, or maybe not 8 to 5, but he had an 8 to 5 job. He considered real estate at least that.
At the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was in the office unless he had something else to do. He was there 8 to 5. And I needed some of that too. I needed that consistency. I needed to not just be trying to do it while I was on the run, on the move.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance. I don't call it a paradox, but it's definitely you got to figure out how you work. There's pros and cons. Some people go all the time, not a lot of structure. Sounds like he was a structure guy.
Yes.
So what is that? He sat at the office all day.
He was at the office. We have opportunities at phone duty to answer the phones, speak to people who might walk in the office.
Okay.
That sort of thing. So he did that quite a bit.
And then he would leave for appointments, or he'd left if an opportunity popped up.
Correct. He would leave for appointments and things like that. But for the most part.
But his home base was always coming back to the office.
He came back to the office.
Yeah. See, not everybody does that, as you know.
Right.
It's like squirrel. You leave the house and okay, I want to go grocery shop, run an errand.
Yeah.
Maybe on your trip, that you sold a couple of houses to some people. Maybe you drive by the neighborhood, drop something off. Yeah. You have a lunch, but he would go do his thing.
Yeah.
And then he would come back.
Yeah.
So you got to see both sides of the coin.
Both sides of the coin, and realized that I needed something very much in the middle.
Okay.
Because that's who I am. Like, I like to go out and meet people, work in the business, but also I had to learn to enjoy working on the business, the paperwork side of things, the things that are absolute necessary, but didn't come naturally to me.
Gotcha. Well, there are things that we want to do and things that we need to do on both ends of that.
Exactly.
The one where you leave and the one where you're here, you need to have consistent activities on both.
Yeah.
So you are the Alan Dugas version of two different sides of two people's coins, and then you melded it into your own style, your systems, what works for you.
Because we all have to do that, right?
You do.
We all have to figure out what's going to work for us personally, what's going to work for our family. I can't be an agent working at 9 o'clock at night. I will do it on occasion, but my family comes first whenever it's family time.
Yeah.
When everyone's home, that's my focus.
Some of the more fun conversations I've had with people, potential clients, obviously from the lending side, I don't deal with people who sell quite as much, or in the traditional sense, like sellers become buyers again. But just if someone's buying a home, a lot of times we have conversations where they're like, hey, well, let me call you after work. And it kind of depends where they are in the sales cycle for me. We want to be available, but like at what cost?
Right.
So I'll typically, the way the conversation gets funny, like just to try to disarm them and get them out of their however they want it to run.
Yeah.
Right. At that point, they're running my business.
Yeah.
Right. I am. We are entrepreneurs. You know. So when I'm like, hey, well, you take a lunch break, right? What time do you go to lunch? Oh, from 12 to 1. Well, let's have lunch together.
Yeah.
The first time we get to meet, we get to break bread, albeit like figuratively speaking on the phone.
Right.
You know, and just really and truly, some people will run errands.
Yeah.
But we all have Bluetooth in the car.
Exactly.
Some people go and they eat a sandwich and they scroll on their phone for 50 minutes.
Right.
Like, hey,
why not cancel some of that scrolling for 20 minutes? And
let's do it together. This is important. Yeah. You're not coming to me to buy a radio.
Exactly.
Like, I want to help you buy a house.
I don't need a $30 loan. I need a $300,000 loan.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You know, and I can't be silly. Like, hey, look, bonus points if you have potato chips. You can crunch in my ear. Like, I don't care. Like, we'll have lunch together. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about those things.
Right. Eat your sandwich. It's cool.
You know, and like you said, there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know, like if it's one of those rare nights where, you know, you or another business partner that I'm working with is you are showing houses for maybe somebody who came in from offshore. Yeah. Maybe it's an on-call physician who's got just crazy schedule.
And those folks are tough. Like you do have to bend your own rules for folks like that.
Yeah, you do.
Especially physicians, because they are married to their job.
They're on call.
Like they have to be.
And their stuff is important.
People's lives literally depend on them.
Literally. So if you help that person, if you call me at 9:00 and say, hey, we need something.
Yeah.
This is a hot property. I'll never, ever, ever allow you to apologize for calling me at 9:00, assuming if I'm awake.
Yeah.
And tell, because if you're out and my phone is ringing, then you're trying to help my family and help yours and help theirs.
Exactly.
I'm all about, we can't win if we don't have an opportunity to throw a hat in the ring.
Right.
Everything else after that, you know, hey, I had a question about bank statements. Cool. Let's talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Or shoot me an email me at 1:00 in the morning. I don't have those alerts on. When I wake up, I'll work off a to-do list when I wake up.
There's bedtime mode.
But yeah. So just kind of talking about how work is going. How have the last 18 months been different for your business?
So I will say that in business, as a real estate agent, I don't believe I've experienced a typical market or a flat market where buyers and sellers have the opportunity to compete equally. If there is such a thing, I don't know, but I started in 2020 when it was absolutely a seller's market, and have experienced all the ups and downs since then. Over the past 18 months, I would say end of 2022 was phenomenal. And then we rolled into 2023, and that was just, the first quarter of 2023 was no good. Like I might have closed 2 deals, and they were like $60,000 properties in New Iberia, knob and tube wiring. We had to work through some unique issues to get those lower priced homes, but changed focus a little bit. Just started.
From what to what?
Okay, so rather than get myself or allow myself to become nervous about when's the next check going to come, or I was starting to kind of get into that mentality, and I kind of stopped myself. I went on a retreat at that time, and said, you know what, I'm just going to kind of crack down and start focusing on myself spiritually. So I did some retreat work. I did a lot of men's groups that I go to, prayer groups, things like that, and started focusing on the people again, not the money. And so I would say the second half of 2023, my family benefited from that, from taking myself out of it, being so concerned, letting go, being okay with the fact that we had savings. I didn't need to necessarily earn heavy like I had in 2022 to keep us going. I just needed to focus on my sphere.
Right. And then things would naturally through just take care of themselves.
So I had always, I don't know if pride is the right word, but I had always been happy about the fact that I had never had to focus on money when I got into real estate. Sure. And then 2023 came around, and you listen to the talking heads for a little too long, and you get in your own head about it, right? So I
succumbed to that as well. I know one thing that kind of pissed me off, to be frank, were people who wouldn't acknowledge it. We call it elephant in the room, or maybe posturing, like, "Oh, dude, I'm the busiest I've ever been," and all of these things. They weren't being forthcoming, right? And part of that maybe is a mindset, right? Like just kind of putting off all that vibe. I was looking for. I didn't want that vibe, right? So when people were actually honest, then I knew, like, okay, so this is someone I can genuinely talk to, whether it's an industry person, whether they're a competitor or not, or just someone else, right? Appraisal, title, other realtors, insurance professionals. I mean, it affected all of us.
You didn't just want the how's it going? Oh, it's going great. Thanks for asking. Conversation. No.
Now look, were there some people on the fringe? There always is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they were the exceptions, not the norms. Yeah. So were they even year over year? Yes. Were there some that were slightly up? Yes. But what's the context? Right. Did you start the year before and I'll tell you only did 5 things, and then now you did 10? Like, oh, my business doubled.
And those folks, I'll tell you exactly what the context is. They kept afloat because those were the agents, the top agents, right, that were handing off referrals in 2022 because they didn't have enough time. And then in 2023, they were keeping those referrals that they were handing off to what I would say newcomer agents. Sure. Right. So they kept afloat by not handing so much of their business off that they just couldn't handle in 2022. And it made sense. I had a lot of referrals from folks who just like my personality, so they're like, hey, listen, these people are very valuable to me, but I have too much on my plate. So would you please, And so that was a big part of my business also in 2022. That's good. That suffered in 2023.
Well, all that does is further validate it. It always pays to just be a genuinely good person. Right. Be kind. Like all the things that we're teaching our kids right now. Yeah. Your 3 girls, my 2 boys. Treat people like you want to be treated. Be kind. Yeah. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Be supportive. Don't judge, like all of those things. So I'm sure you were doing some combination of all of those things, because if you weren't, people wouldn't have come to you and said, hey, you're going to do a good job. I trust you with this. Right. Because in our own way, we were talking about physicians having people's lives in their hands. You kind of did too. Yeah. And someone trusted you to do that.
This is true.
So that's a big compliment. Yeah. Like a big one. And if you weren't a good person, those sorts of things wouldn't have happened. Yeah. Well, so keep doing what you're doing.
I see it as a win, and it reminds me often when I think back on that sort of stuff that I just need to stay focused on the people. Yeah. It's not about money. The money will come if you build the relationships, and that's just the fruit of a healthy relationship with anyone.
It's true. People do business with people.
That's right.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
And
anyone who treats it different, I like to say a real estate transaction is more of a dance than it is a fight. And some people show up for the fight. Some people show up for the dance. And usually, I show up for the dance. Not everyone's going to walk away from the table with all the cards, but everyone has to walk away happy.
I've never heard that. That's a good one. The fight versus the dance.
I'm going to give Arliss Slaughter credit for that one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, look, I think that's important too. Part of being a good person and part of being humble and being a professional. Like a lot of the ideas that we've talked about offline, some of the things we're discussing here, we stand on the shoulders of those that came before us.
Absolutely.
I've had several mentors as well. And I wouldn't be me without them.
Right.
I saw a bunch of different ways to do things. The person who mentored me is a giant locally in this industry.
Yeah.
Like giant. We don't work the same way. We really don't.
But
there are a lot of things that we do the same. There are many things that we do different. But the crazy part is that even if I wasn't worried about being authentic to myself, but if I literally tried to do what he did to become him, I wouldn't be able to ever do exactly what he did.
Meet up, reach those expectations or do exactly. Yeah.
The things that I do, the approach along the way
right.
has to be mine.
Yeah.
But he and the way things turned out for him, I would say would be a destination for me.
Right. It can be a goal that you always strive for.
Sure. And look, if I fall 20% short,
I
will have impacted a lot of families in a positive way.
Yeah.
Including mine.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in mentorship. And you know what? If I wasn't a good guy, he wouldn't have brought me on.
Right.
He wouldn't have allowed me to name drop him.
Right.
He had worked his ass off to build up his brand.
He invited you into his business when he agreed to mentor you.
He actually also got me hired on.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll always be grateful, right? Yeah. But always acknowledge, like, look, hey, Derek, you're whatever. And like, look, this isn't an original thought.
Yeah.
It might be my version of it. Or, and the cool part and the part that I'm having fun with now, coming into year 8 is I'm getting to share some things with him.
Yeah.
Which is super fun.
Isn't that awesome?
Not student teaches the teacher.
Right. But giving back almost.
But giving back.
It's beautiful when you can give back someone. Like,
100%.
I help Penny now. On occasion, she'll call me up and say, hey, Alan, what do I do about this? Well, I dove further into whatever that was. Let's say leasing, finding landlords, tenants, right? That's not her forte. But she'll call me and say, hey, listen, I have this listing. I have a landlord and we have a tenant that's interested in it. Well, what's my next step? And just being able to, it's simple. It's, but it's just a different set of documentation. So it's always enjoyable when you can do that, right? Give back to someone who's helped you.
You give that value back.
Yeah.
You're helping them with the business evolves.
Yeah.
It evolved. I got licensed in 2016.
Okay.
It changed when COVID happened.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
For everybody.
But you had gone through 2 major changes in the industry at that point. If you started in 2016 with the flood.
I got it right after that.
Okay.
Yeah, right after that. COVID, that COVID era, that was a thing. Late 22, early 23, that was another one.
Right.
And it's probably fixing to change again. Like, things are moving rapidly.
Yeah. In
the world, but those things have a direct impact on not only us, but the way that we have to run our business.
Right.
So
do you think in the near future, if we have the rate drops like the Feds are talking about, what's your opinion on how heavily that'll affect the market?
I've heard through mastermind groups that for every 1% of a drop in whatever the prevailing interest rates are at any given time.
Yeah. So
let's say right now they're in the high 6s.
Yeah.
If those drop to the high 5s, nationally, minimum 5 million buyers jump off the fence.
Straight into the market.
What does that mean in Lafayette? Who knows? Yeah. But there's going to be a bigger buyer pool. Okay. So how does that affect people who are shopping? Particularly people who are waiting on the fence right now. And look, if you're listening to this, you've seen like, the industry professionals are saying, look, do it now. If you don't like the term, like, find the house you love.
Right.
We can figure out insurance and interest rates and all those things later. But if you can afford it now, get it.
Yeah.
For a few reasons. One, the property appreciation is continuing to increase.
Yeah.
That's partially due to inflation, but partially due to supply and demand. And then, but you're going to wait. And you're like, oh, you just want to sell a house. No, like we are legitimately telling you, like if you think it's hard waiting now, it will be harder to wait once you're losing a lot.
Right.
So what do I mean by losing a lot? You go find a house, you love it, you have an interest rate of X, a sale price of X.
You decide against it.
Hey, my Apple News feed, my parents, my employers, my friends are calling me. They're telling me it's not a good time to buy.
Right.
Well, so then they'll ask me like, well, hey, Derek, do you think it's a good time to buy? And I answer their question with a question.
All right.
Is it not a good idea to own a home?
And that's a great question.
And then I'll say, well, it depends. What are you trying to do? Your situation is going to be different from your mom, from your friend, from your employer, from whatever the news is telling you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. And then we're having much different conversations now, because really, what are the benefits of home ownership? So there's a lot to unpack with that, but 5 million people nationally will enter for every 1% drop. So what does that mean to you, and why is it important that we're telling you that now? Because we don't want you to lose later. That the more people you're going to compete against, multiple offer situations.
Right. Higher prices.
Price went up already because it appreciated a hair. What does that mean? Maybe it goes from 300 to 304,000, but it's more.
Right.
Rates drop.
Drop. And then
if you're in a multiple offer situation,
yeah,
who ultimately wins the contract? Did they go by bidding it down or bidding it up?
There are so many factors in there. They go by bidding it up, though. I mean, they'll put in 10 grand over asking price guaranteed just to win the bid, and then maybe they'll come up with cash too.
Yep. So we'll have conversation. Hey, here's how much the house is selling for now. Here's the terms that you qualify for now.
Yeah. Best
in the market that we have access to. What happens based off of the current appreciation rate? What is this house going to be worth selling in 6 months? But let's try to predict.
Yeah.
What does that look like in a competitive environment?
Yeah.
Even if the rates drop 1%.
Let's look back at 2020, see what those houses did when the rates started dropping.
House maybe appreciated $4,000. Maybe that gets bid up to 310, 315.
Yeah.
And then you've had all this time. How do you calculate the cost of waiting?
Right.
Are you a renter right now? If you're a renter, then it's really not wise.
Right. Because rent's through the roof.
Rent's through the roof. If you're renting, I would tell you can't scoff at an interest rate at whatever it's at, because your rent interest rate's 100%.
100%, exactly. Yep. You're throwing all of that money out there for 1 month in a house.
Do you have a CPA?
I do.
Okay, so you have a CPA. So let's talk about it from a CPA perspective. There's no mortgage interest that you can write off. There's no tax benefit to renting.
No.
100% loss.
Right.
Let's just talk about it from a home equity perspective.
Yeah.
How much? 6 more months of rent? 100% loss.
$0.
You get nothing from that back. Someone else is in control of your life. All of those things. And the biggest one I get from the first-time home buyers is, well, Derek, what happens if I lose my job? Or what happens if I don't get as much overtime? Or what happens if all of the things?
Right.
And look, you can go down a rabbit hole with that stuff. But ultimately, what I do is I listen and I wait, and then I redirect.
Yeah.
Hey, you don't live with your parents. You rent, correct? And then they'll say yes. And then what happens if any one or more of those things happen and you rent? Do you think you're not going to get kicked out of where you rent?
Right.
And oh, by the way, and thank God I haven't had to go through this personally. And even if professionally, we're not kind of on that deal, but you have a lot longer time frame if you get in a bind for, like, if you fall behind in the house and pre-foreclosure and all that stuff.
Landlord's going to kick you out right away.
Right away.
Bank's going to give you a good solid chunk of time.
Yeah.
And they'll probably want to work with you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they want to get paid.
The landlord, his note depends on you paying the bill.
That's right. Because most of them are smaller mom and pop type of.
Right.
If you're renting a house.
Yeah. If you're purchasing, you're dealing with a larger entity that can sustain for a little bit longer and give you some time
Yeah. So
come back.
Will they drop? Hopefully.
Yeah.
You know, industry insiders are saying as such. You're seeing articles. What no one will commit to, which thank God they're not, because they're going to be wrong. When does it start? At what velocity will it drop? It definitely won't be linear, right? So it's not just going to do like that. For how long and where does it stop?
Right.
You know, are we talking about 0.5% over 2 years? Are we talking about 2% over 8 months?
Yeah.
Are we, you know, and at what cost?
What's a healthy balance and how does it affect the economy?
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like typically recessions, lower interest rate environments follow recessions.
Right.
So how can you hope for that? Well, hopefully like the recession part doesn't impact your job.
Right. It doesn't last too long, you know?
It usually doesn't. It usually doesn't. So I guess the takeaway that I would leave for what are interest rates going to do would be don't try to time the market.
Right.
It doesn't work when you do, you know, traditional investing in securities, stocks, bonds, all that stuff. There's tons of data. Like somebody could be in the market for 5 years and get out for 20 days.
Yeah.
And then get back in, and then like they'll recalculate like hey, what would have happened if you'd have stayed invested the whole time.
Yeah.
And the numbers are staggering.
Right.
No one's ever right. And the people that are, they're an anomaly.
Right.
You know, those are the exceptions, not the norms. Some people get lucky, yes.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to be one of those people. You wouldn't necessarily be either. And we do this every day.
Right.
Because we don't know.
Yeah.
So if anyone tells you anything different, they don't have a crystal ball. And look, we're in this all the time. Like they don't know.
Yeah. It's funny that you say crystal ball because that's something that we learned in what's called the Ninja Training Course. It's a training course that we took. I took it in October of 2019. And that's one of the things they say. Well, when someone asks you a question that is just, you know, there's no good answer to it, you say, well, if I could pull out my crystal ball and speak to that, you know, but I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't.
And it's important that you you mention that, you preface it, all of that stuff, but also say, look, if you hear something different,
yeah,
I'm telling you this because I care about your well-being.
Right.
Whoever's telling you something polar opposite from what I am, you should run.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, whether you work with me or not, if you hear something that's polar opposite of what I'm telling you,
yeah,
and they're speaking in absolutes,
you should run.
You should run.
We don't have absolutes. We
No.
cannot give that to you.
No.
Our whole industry's data is based on what happened in the recent past.
That's right.
That's what we have to give you. We can't give you anything that's going to happen in the future.
That's right. Have you had a lot of people ask you when the best time to get pre-approved for a purchase is?
Yes. And my suggestion is always get pre-approved before we start looking at homes. Because if you don't, and the first home we see is something that you fall in love with, then we need a quick turnaround on pre-approval. Otherwise, you stand a chance to lose that home. So usually in my first consultation, I'll have a client meet me at the office so that we're meeting in person, especially if I've never met that person before. And we'll just sit down and talk about expectations from both sides. I want you to know that you want to work with me just as much as I need to know if I want to work with you, sort of thing. So we get through a lot of details, a lot of questions. I find out needs. I find out where they're coming from. And if I feel I'm a good fit for them, I'll ask them, do you feel like, you know, I'd be a good fit for you? Because I do feel like I can help you.
Sure.
You know, but if I don't, I'll also say, hey, listen, I know someone who is more specialized in what you're looking for, or, you know, whatever it may be, and let them know that, hey, listen, you know, I can make a suggestion, but I think this other real estate agent might be better for you.
Gotcha. I've had lengthy discussions about that. Actually, I had a call before you and I sat down today, and we were talking about do we need to be strategic about when we pull credit based off of their timeline for purchase. And I have to kind of determine that the client's going to kind of fall on the fringe of being able to afford the price range with which I think they're ultimately going to be happy.
Yeah.
And one thing that we talked about was like, look, if this is where you think you are, we need to do it now.
Yeah.
And he said, well, should I even get pre-approved? Like, what if we do something tomorrow, but what if it's like 3 months from now?
Right.
And the way that I answered him was the best time to get pre-approved is when you can actually get pre-approved.
Yeah.
Okay. So this guy makes X amount of money. He's been on the job for a certain amount of time, his credit score. So all of the things that we know that are currently very good,
right,
they can change.
Yeah. If you're 6 months into a career, it's not time to get pre-approved.
Well, look, what if 2 months from now he finds the house and I haven't pulled yet?
Right.
But something fell through the cracks because he travels for work.
Right.
And maybe he has a medical bill that goes to collections.
Missed a
or
payment.
he's pays 8 things every month and then all of a sudden he's 60 days late for this one credit card that he just started and he hadn't gotten in the groove of paying and he forgot.
No.
And then we go pull again and there's no 780 credit score anymore. It's like a 630.
Right. Because one payment.
Yep.
One missed payment.
So the best time is when you can.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he might want to go be self-employed. Maybe he'll want to be a realtor in 6 or 7 months. Maybe he wants to open a business.
Oh, I
that
experienced
changes
that during the 3% interest rates where I was like, oh, perfect, I'm gonna refi. Yeah. Oh wait, I'm 1099.
That's right. That's right. So deep conversations are important.
Yeah.
When's a good time to get pre-approved? I'm not just gonna say no.
Yeah.
There's so many layers. What's a good time? Well, what are you trying to do? What's your timeline?
Yeah.
This guy's single with no kids. All right. So I'm going to have a different conversation than I would with you because you're in a different chapter of life.
Right.
We're talking about, hey, this is a forever house. This is a decade house.
Yeah.
I'm climbing the corporate ladder. I move every 3 years. Well, that's going to alter the way we have conversations and what strategies we devise.
Yeah.
But that's also going to affect how your search too.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, a 10-year buyer versus a 3-year buyer versus this is my final home. Those are all different conversations.
Yeah.
In so many different ways, so many different.
It's very situation specific and very unique to each person.
Yeah.
So when I guess my advice, which you already know, but as I tell my clients, look, it's coming from a good place when you're getting people who are giving you feedback. If they didn't care, they wouldn't say anything.
Right.
But you have to be mindful of the feedback that you get because that person was in a certain chapter of life at the time that they did their thing, whatever they did.
Yeah.
Their financial situation may or may not have been different. Was it 18 years ago?
Right.
4 markets ago? Whatever.
Yeah.
We have to be in the now, and it has to be very specific to you.
Yeah.
So these can be good guides to follow, but it's
we have to set our clients up for success.
We do,
and
they have to be open to listening.
And they do, yeah. And we have to trust our partners too.
That's right.
In the industry.
That's right. Well, man, thanks for hanging out today.
Yeah, man.
Long time coming.
Yeah, I had a good time.
Wanted to thank you, kind of off topic, for reaching out to me on a co-collab. This has kind of been a brainchild of mine, a passion project that I had been wanting. I don't know if brainchild is the right word, but almost 11 months to the day that I started thinking about it. Hundreds of hours over the last researching equipment, format, watching tons of content to see what I liked and didn't like. And when the universe connected us in our own little unique way, it just so happened to be at the time where I was on the cusp of actually doing something. So thank you for the swift kick in the nuts.
You're very welcome. Yeah. When funny thing is that whole conversation started about a can of tuna fish.
Was that what it was?
Yeah. We're talking about what we didn't want to eat for lunch today. And we were both in the middle of eating it.
That's right.
Yep.
I forgot.
Yep.
Well, cool. Alan, great as always to see you. Thanks for being one of the first guests on the Nest podcast.
Well, I appreciate the invite and you spending the time with me today.
Of course. We'll have to do it again. For those listening and watching, how can they find you online?
Alan Dugas on Facebook.
Allen Dugas, Dugas.
That is correct.
Good deal, brother. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Have a good one.
You too.